Let's pretend for a while, shall we? A man walks in here and he begins to teach. He then makes some claims about himself because he sees that we don't think that he has use of all his faculties. So he claims to be God. What do? Interesting when you kind of put it in that perspective, isn't it? This guy's loony. He's not all there. We got to escort this guy out. There'd be all kinds of thoughts going through your mind. Or maybe you'd just walk out. You really wouldn't know what to do. But that's really where we're at today in our trek through John, the book of John, the gospel. And as we do, we're going to look at Jesus. He's being accused of being a lawbreaker. More specifically, a Sabbath breaker. Because he healed on the Sabbath. He healed the man by the pool. It was great. Created a big hullabaloo in the temple where there's a lot of people milling around. And then Jesus finds the man. And this guy says, "There's the guy who healed me." So they're going to take him in for questioning the Pharisees, the Sadducees. So Jesus goes before the religious leaders and he's accused. So Jesus being a Sabbath breaker, the word answered has legal overtones to it when Jesus answers them, as if he would be defending himself in court. Any of you guys watch some of those lawyer shows that appear from time to time on TV? Real life is never like TV, is it? That's what we do. We'll pick apart the shows. They would never do that. Judge would have kicked them out a long time ago. They'd be in jail. Lawyers pull shenanigans and they still can do things. I don't know. It's just... But Jesus is responding almost like an attorney would. Responding to charges, formal charges that are brought before him. So he makes claims in the process that just really, really infuriate people. These religious leaders. They just get very, very angry. Because they really have no response to him. They have no legal response to him. He's making claims they can't refute. And things he does seem to even back up what he's claiming. And that's what's interesting. So that was their response to Jesus' claims. And what we need to look at today is what is our response to Jesus' claims? So just like, the front of your bulletins there, who is Jesus? Who is he? Who do you think Jesus is? And it's not like Jesus is different things to different people. Jesus is who he says he was. So the necessary question is, how am I going to respond to who Jesus is? So as we look at that, we can see that in our passage, John 5, we'll look at 16 through 30 today, and here's the first 5 verses. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. Not because he healed someone. We talked last week about that pool where the man was laying beside, but he could never get down there when the waters were stirred. Because people would go there and they would be healed when that would happen. So it happened, but Jesus he heals this guy. So the problem wasn't he healed someone, the problem was when he did it. That's a no-no. You don't do that on the Sabbath. That's work. And this was the problem with the Pharisees and Sadducees. You see, they had made the law a list of rules to follow, a list of do's and don'ts. Jesus was persecuted for doing different things on the Sabbath. And he makes it very clear during his ministry that he's the Lord of the Sabbath. And he asks them, if your ox had fallen into a ditch, wouldn't you get it out? That's work. You see, there's things that are necessary. And it tells us in Hebrews that the Sabbath was created for man, not man for the Sabbath, which is what the Pharisees and Sadducees turned it into. We're made to follow these rules. It's a legalistic idea. Follow these rules and you'll be a good Jew. Notice I did not say Christian. You'll be a good Jew because that's what mattered to them. But Jesus is turning the tables. He's saying, no, that's not what my Father meant. You're missing the point. The Sabbath was created for man's benefit. Why? To set aside a time where you can worship. We talked about having children. Making it a priority in our family to worship together with people. That's why, sitting at home watching on Facebook or something like that, it's an okay substitute, but there's no substitute for being together and worshiping God. Secondly, for rest. For rest. These companies that have machines that go 24/7, they have a lot of breakdowns. Companies that have one day where they don't run have fewer breakdowns. Machines even need rest. It's remarkable how that goes. We are made to require rest from our labors. That doesn't mean I sit on the couch all day and do absolutely nothing. The Jews took it to the point where they didn't prepare meals that day. They prepared everything they needed Saturday night. If you want to, that's fine. So all they did was get the food and eat. And they can only take so many steps. Otherwise, they broke the law. But the Sabbath was created for man. What we need to focus on, and I just recently heard a message from Chip Ingram, which was rather convicting too. We tend to do a lot of things on the Sabbath. Stuff we didn't squeeze in during the week or on Saturday or something. And, I'll just do that. And then we don't rest. We don't focus on God. That doesn't mean you're in a total state of prayer all day. But we need to set aside time to worship and to rest. And that's what the Sabbath was for, but the Pharisees had twisted it, and Jesus was doing good. So he was doing something wonderful on the Sabbath, but they missed the whole point. So as a result, let's finish our verses. So Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing. And greater works than these will he show him, so that you may marvel." A little foreshadowing going on. Jesus is saying what's going to come. So, claim number one that Jesus brings about himself, he's one with the Father in actions. He's just repeating what he does. Have you guys ever had small children just repeat what you do? Sometimes that's happened as a sibling, right? And they repeat everything you say and they just annoy the heck out of you. And they just repeat everything you say over and over, and you just get more and more irritated. No. But when a child mimics what you do, it's really cute when a small child will do things. They're learning how to do things. But that's what Jesus does. He just repeats what he sees the Father doing. God reveals it to the Son, and the Son does it. Better than a toddler doing it. But he does it. I just think of those times when people decide to pick on a person in the room, and so they adopt the body posture that they are. They cross their legs, they do it. Everyone does it at the same time, and they repeat. It's really that way. He's just following what God the Father does. And he's doing it. So in the process, the charges are brought. You're a Sabbath breaker. I mean, we look at that and we kind of go, yeah. So what? You know what the penalty was for breaking the Sabbath? Death. They stoned you. It was pretty serious. Now, God told them to do that. There was a death penalty applied by God when the law was given. God was serious when he gave them this command. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, which is why it's convicting when you hear a message on that. You're kind of going, yeah, I really need to rearrange my priorities. Fortunately, we don't get stoned by somebody for breaking the Sabbath. But sometimes our priorities are a little out of line, and we really need to reevaluate those things. So they bring these charges. A defense is made. So we got the gavel coming down. You know, they've got the jury together. They're going to try Jesus, in other words. So they bring the charges before him, and Jesus then responds. A defense is made. So Jesus is there, and he's defending himself. I don't know if his disciples are present. We don't really know for certain. But he starts to respond. What he does is he talks about his Father. His Father, my Father, my Father, my Father. The problem is the Jews, they would have said, our Father. So he's making a claim right there as part of being one with the Father. He's his Son, my Father, my Father. They looked at it just in a spiritual sense. But Jesus is saying, this is my Father. My Father in heaven. I'm doing what he tells me to do. So, and then he uses the phrase, I tell you the truth, 3 times. You see that in verse 19, where I tell you the truth. He's emphasizing so that they know that what he's claiming about himself is absolutely true. Do you understand who I am? I don't know if you've ever had anybody say something like that to you. It can be really almost condescending because we know they're just another person when they say it to us, and it's like, you're not any better than me. It kind of gets your dander up sometimes. It's like, pff, I don't care who you are. Then sometimes we mouth off. But we aren't going to let anybody say, do you realize who I am? Well, yeah. But Jesus is telling them who he is. I tell you the truth. I'm not lying to you. He's not doing it in a condescending way. He's establishing the fact of the matter that he is God's Son. That he is who he says he was. In the process, he makes himself equal with God. Jesus is God. He's not just a wonderful teacher who lived a long time ago and then died. No, he is God in human form, who died, rose from the dead, victorious over sin, ascended to heaven so that we can have a right relationship with him. And we forget that. We take it for granted that he did that. So he makes himself there. There is a oneness, like he says, whatever I see the Father doing, like Jesus sees God doing things. I do them. I see him and then I do it. There you have that mimicking type of thing. And it's interesting, if we could just do that in our own life, we could see God working and doing what God does. The expressions of love, encouragement, support, communicating who God is in other people's life. So that oneness that he alludes to is really kind of an intimacy. The word for love there that's used actually is phileo, like a brotherly love, a bonded kind of love. And it's a really intimate friendship. Someone you have as a very, very close friend that you're bonded with. That's the way it is, that Jesus is saying he is with God. So we have he's one with the Father in actions. And then we go to our second claim in the next set of verses. For as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. Truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming and is now here, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself. So the second claim is like the power to give life. We read in those last few verses. Jesus has the ability to give life. What does he tell people many times that he's healed? Go and sin no more, or your sins are forgiven. The point is not to give them a pain-free life. The point is not to just make life easier for them. The point is to point them to a right relationship with him and the Father. That's the purpose of why Jesus healed. Where we want to look for other things, where we kind of ask God for things, why? It's like, God, I don't want to hurt anymore. I'm tired of this. God, I can't deal with that. And it's like, we're not guaranteed a pain-free life. What we are guaranteed is joy in the midst of that, in relationship with him. What we are guaranteed is an abundant life, peace, as we submit to him. Sometimes, again, to point people to him, you see a physical healing, you see miraculous things happen, but it's to point people to him. That's the important part that we often miss because we're so focused on us, focused on what I want. And we need to focus on him and him alone. He has the power to give life. He gives life to whom he wills. I don't want you to take this to an extreme where God picks those who are going to be saved. That's not entirely true. He does pick us, but it's based on who he knows will desire to follow him. In Romans, it tells us those he foreknew, he foreordained and predestined to become children of God. But you see, God's outside of time. He's in the past, present, and future all at once. He knows what you're going to think. He knows what you're going to do. He knows that you want and desire to choose him. So that's how he elects us. And he foreordains us to be a child of God. It's not just God randomly selecting, you're going to be saved, you're not, you are, you're not. It's not just a random thought. That's not consistent with his justice, with who he is. That's an unjust thing to do. So God knows who we are, and he gives life to whom he will because he knows that they're going to follow him. So he gives life to whomever he wills, and this comes through belief. Belief. Ephesians 2:8-9, for by grace you have been saved through faith, not of yourself, not by works, lest any man should boast. I started getting NIV and King James mixed up in those. But it's not us that gets credit for being saved. That comes from God. But we need to have faith. We need to trust that God is who he is, that Jesus is who he said he is. And that's very important. So his third claim then, and he has given him authority to execute judgment because he is the Son of Man. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. Again, the Son points to the Father in doing so. Now, he has the authority to judge. God has given that to Jesus. We will be judged by Jesus. He says it pretty clearly there. And all these things about Jesus say something about him, do we accept those? And do you see how this in particular is very hard for these religious leaders to swallow? I have the authority to judge. They're like, oh, wait a minute. That's our job. That's why you're before us. Because you broke our law. You're a Sabbath breaker. But they couldn't refute him. They had nothing to come back at him with. They couldn't use the law. They couldn't use the word. Jesus shows them that he is who he says he is. And they can do nothing about it except get ticked off because they're threatening their way of life and their position and power. That didn't set well with them. So he makes these claims. You see, Christ makes the call. He's the one who will judge. What's that? No, we're good. We're good. Yeah, we're fine. I just didn't hit it right. Christ makes the call, and Christ will preside. He will be the presiding judge. You know, the judge enters the courtroom, the bailiff stands up. The Honorable such and such, Judge Judy. No, but presiding. That's Jesus presiding. When that time comes, he mentioned two judgments there. For those who didn't believe and for those who did believe. For judgment and to the resurrection. You have the great white throne judgment, which is for judgment. You have the Bema judgment, which is for believers. God gives us rewards. It's not a merit system in heaven, but he has rewards for us. And Jesus presides over those. So that's what we have to look forward to. He's in there, he will judge. Really, the question comes down to this. Jesus makes those three claims. We see first he's one with the Father in actions. Okay. He and the Father are one. He is God. Okay. He has the power to give life. So we're sinners. We're all going to hell. But Jesus came to provide the way that we can go to heaven. And that only comes through him. Which is why he is the judge. God sent his son Jesus Christ to die on the cross, to rise from the dead, so we can have life. And then he will judge ultimately our eternity. How do we respond to who Jesus is? Do we really believe that? Do I believe that Jesus is God's son? Or do I think he's this guy who did some cool stuff a couple thousand years ago? Does it affect the way I live my life? That's really what that believe means. It changes us because we wholeheartedly believe it. Do we live our life and submit to him just like the Son just does the Father's will? We need to do his will in our lives, living for him and not ourselves. Now, God is the giver of good gifts. He often gives us awesome things that we desire, that we want. But sometimes those things are a little too important to us. So he may not give us, or he may do it. We talked this morning about how Israel wanted a king so bad. They had prophets, they had judges, but they wanted a king. God, we need a king. Everybody else has a king. We need a king. So he gave him Saul. Yeah, that didn't work so well. So he anoints David. And Saul creates misery for David for years. You see, what we want isn't necessarily what we need. What we need is to follow Jesus, to believe that he has our best interests at heart, no matter what, and to follow him every step of the way. Whether it be in what we're going to do for the rest of our life, whether it be in how we establish our priorities in our home, our finances, our jobs, at school, our relationships. We take a different perspective on things. How will this point people to God? How can God use me to direct people to the Lord? Let's pray. Father, I pray that you continue to challenge each of us to respond to your claims. Lord, that Jesus is the most important person in our life, that we can reflect your will just as Jesus did yours. Father, it's possible.